In this series, we're looking at supporting disabled adults with neuromuscular conditions. As long as they have the capacity to consent, then these adults, like any other, are entitled to engage in sex and sexual activity. Oliver Poole has spinal muscular atrophy. He has a wife and 2 children.
People are people. And of course, sexuality is in there. The nature of a good PA is about, I want to facilitate your life. I want to enable you to do what you want to do.
Many people with neuromuscular conditions can be worried that if they ask for help with sexual things, it will be taken as inappropriate, instead of in the professional capacity intended. John Ray Hastie has Duchenne muscular dystrophy and lives with his husband.
I think it's really important that PAs are led by the person they're supporting in how they communicate about things to do with sex and relationships. For me when I was younger, and certainly for other people, it can be like very, very awkward to begin with, and it's something that almost you try and hide from your PA. I think if a PA working with someone is going to pick up on what's happening.
So I thought, do you know what? My sexuality and my urges, that I'm just going to hold them in. I am not allowed to feel this way, because otherwise I'm deemed as a sexual predator in a chair, which really was upsetting.
Your PA's judgment is really powerful for like the person that they're supporting, and kind of, yeah, if you feel like you're going to be judged on something, then that makes you really uncomfortable and then unable to be yourself. So I think that's something that's really important for PAs, is to enable the person to be themselves and to not be judgmental about things that they may not either understand or be comfortable with.
The key to avoiding misunderstandings is communication and consent.
Where PAs are more likely to have issues providing certain support, then it's making that clear that that can be optional. So it depends on what it is. Obviously, if it's something that falls within the boundaries of kind of normal expected duties, so for example, cleaning my private parts, I don't see as an aspect of sex and relationships. So that's part of personal care. So that's something that is an integral part of the job, and that can't be optional. But for example, supporting me, for example, like cleaning up after sex, for example, that's something that I would see as optional. In terms of, I wouldn't be comfortable with anyone being kind of forced to provide that help if they weren't comfortable providing it. I think everyone's very individual as well in terms of the support that they need, and also in things like positioning and stuff. Some people might need more help to get into a position that's suitable for them. Being clear with everyone about what the boundaries are, giving people the option to not kind of support me in that regard if they're not comfortable with it, and doing that in a way that we don't have to have an awkward conversation about that. Just trying to make that as easy as possible, I think is good for both parties, really.
From a practical perspective, a person with a neuromuscular condition with a non-disabled long-term partner might need minimal assistance related to their sex life. Depending on their relationship, the couple may choose to retain their privacy by relying on the non-disabled partner to do intimate care tasks needed as a result of sex.
If you're part of a couple, that might be something that your partner will be able to do, in which case it's about the PA giving space and not interrupting, and kind of being aware of where what they should do, where they should be.
As all relationships evolve and change. Nowadays, my wife will. I don't even need to get ready, right? This is how bloody, this is Jesus, yeah. But yeah, so my wife will get me ready and clean me up. Yeah, basically, if my wife's involved, then she does it all. And if I want to masturbate, then she's not, then I just have the PA can set me up.
It's also sometimes important to keep the mystery alive, and as a PA, you might be asked to help with getting ready, for instance, setting up the room or helping them to put on particular clothes. And you might still be asked to do personal care after sex that includes cleanup.
So we have a loving and supportive relationship where we support each other. And I support my husband with many different things, and he supports me with things as well. But making sure that balance and that relationship doesn't go too far one way. So if I became completely dependent on my partner for all my care, then that would create this dependency and this imbalance in the relationship that could cause problems further down the line. Not everyone has the same kind of relationship that I do. Some people do receive a lot more help from their partners.
Working in the home of a couple where one partner has a neuromuscular condition, you will be helping your employer to take an active part in their shared life.
As part of a couple, I do things for my partner, and that forms the basis of our relationship. So, for example, I make food for my partner, and having the PA to support me to do that is really important. So I think sometimes there might be a bit of confusion that the PA thinks that they're doing care for my partner in that instance, rather than what they're actually doing is empowering me to take part in the relationship in the way that I want to, and kind of part of a relationship is doing things for your partner.
It could be that the partner of the person you work with also has a condition, and that makes it difficult for them to provide extra help in private, intimate situations. Charlotte and Tom Hardwick met online and are now married. They each have different forms of muscular dystrophy.
I'm Tom, and this is Charlotte, and we both live in a nice little bungalow together. Got a lovely little dog called Junebug, and we're supported by a team of PAs 24/7, which means that we can have the best quality of life and the fullest life that we possibly can.
We both kind of get a lot of strength from just, being in bed together like we are now and just like snuggling up, but like also like, in terms of like sex, and we find ways. We do have like a really healthy sex life.
Yeah, our PAs are very good. I mean, they don't have to get massively involved in the really, really intimate stuff that they don't want to see, but it will involve them, sometimes getting us into position and then leaving us as well. Some of the issues we can have is sometimes we can get stuck in positions.
We call that a snuggle down.
So sometimes we have had to crawl in a PA when we're both naked and in a strange position. But the way that we deal with that is we kind of have a good laugh and joke about it with our PAs. I think that's the best, one of the ways to deal with it and defuse any awkwardness is to just, laugh and giggle.
We definitely have a line like that we don't cross. There are always going to be things that we want to do that we can't, and you just have to accept that because that's life.
Getting privacy is really challenging, particularly when you don't necessarily live in a very large place. You don't necessarily have a separate room that you can send the PA to. I think it's about being very clear with the PA about the boundaries that you need them to respect in terms of privacy. So if I want privacy, then I have a baby monitor, an intercom in my room to allow me to call the PAs. But obviously I will turn that off if I want private time. And I will shut the door. And it's basically explaining to PAs, not to bother me when the door is shut. And also getting them to understand how to knock. So, a lot of PAs will knock and enter a room rather than knocking and waiting to be told to enter a room. And so it's about being very clear with them about what the protocol is for doing that, basically.
My wife might say to the PA, right, I'm just going to go and hang out with Vodafone for a bit. There's sort of little terms that we use, they know, like a code. I'm going to go and cuddle with Vodafone for a bit. They know to get the hell out of there. They know what this means.
When you know so much about a couple's intimate life, it can be easy to feel over-involved. Maintaining professional distance and exercising discretion is important for you as well as for the couple.
I think particularly when you're supporting a couple, whether they're both disabled or one has a disability, there's all those other issues around relationship dynamics and body confidence. I think we've got a really supportive PA team, and they know just when to step back and just let us be us, and maybe ignore the tension in the room and not comment on it, or but then they also know when to maybe offer a hug or a listening ear, but at the same time to not get too involved in our relationship and let us have that ourselves.
There will be times when you overhear or see things that are private, and times when you're asked to do particular things that mean you'll know about something confidential. As in every aspect of your job as a PA, you must maintain that confidentiality. There are also times when you should actively avoid being intrusive or interfering.
I think PAs need to know the people that they're working with, and when they're in relationships, they need to know the dynamics of that couple. It's about also developing those little signals, if the door's closed, then that means you want to be left alone. And I think it's important for PAs to kind of become perceptive.
Of course, to get into a long-term relationship, first there will be dating.
At the end of our first date, I went to kind of kiss Tom on the cheek, but I lost my balance in my wheelchair and just face planted into his lap, and then had to be rescued. And then we very quickly retreated into our individual wheelchair accessible vehicles and drove off embarrassed. But I think we decided from that point, didn't we, that if we were going to have a relationship, we were going to have to be okay with doing things a bit differently.
Yeah.
As a PA, you might be asked to provide more practical support for someone who is single and dating. The help you're asked to give might include things which enable the person you work with to have sex.
PAs would help me get ready in terms of fashion, looking good, smelling good, hiding equipment, hoisting me on the bed, getting me in a certain position, ready for position, assisting me to make the girl feel comfortable as well. That's weird. That's a weird dynamic. What I would have to do is be ceiling tracks hoisted onto my hospital bed. Then I would have a freshen up wash down the private areas and all of that jazz. And I would have to let the PA know what's happening, and basically go to the other room, and you don't want to be listening. Obviously, I need them there, but I would often say go to the other room and play some music, or go for a walk or something like that, because the person I'm with, I trust them. So then I'll be able to get that person, the girl, to go and get the PA one, to clean me up afterwards and wash me and all that jazz, and get me back to the land of reality and back in the wheelchair.
There are lots of factors that affect whether a PA will be comfortable in different scenarios. Think about the situation of the person you work for and what you would feel comfortable helping with.
It comes down to personality
Yeah.
to an extent.
Yeah.
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 Some people are just
Yeah, that's what I was thinking,
naturally more okay with it, and some people are more nervous.
As much as you may feel awkward, embarrassed, or nervous talking about these things, the person you work with may feel the same.
I do find it quite difficult sometimes to talk about sex and relationships with PAs. It's something that is kind of an awkward subject to approach. And I think a lot of people do feel very awkward about it. But I think it's important to address it kind of openly and honestly and sensitively. And I think it's really important to have those conversations in a kind of like safe and comfortable space for both the PA and me. And doing everything I can to kind of be aware of sensitivities around the issues.
We bring up like intimacy with PAs like at interview often, because it's a big part of our lives, big part of our like emotional and well-being.
Yeah.
So I think if a PA was like, no, I'm not comfortable with being involved in that at all, then we'd probably be like, well, you can't really support us to live like our whole life then, because that's like a big part of our lives. But we are very sensitive to their kind of needs as well, and we approach it differently with different PAs, and we certainly would go to different levels, if you like, with different PAs in terms of trust and intimacy. We try to never put a PA in a position that they feel awkward in, or like where they can't say, where they don't feel they can say, actually, I'm not comfortable with doing that. But even those that have maybe been hesitant at first, I think we find it's surprising how quickly it becomes quite normal. And I think once you've got over that hurdle once of like, I think the first time, I'm sure Tom won't mind me saying this, like the first time you had to ask a PA to put me in sexy underwear was like, a barrier to go past. And then that became normal. And then the first time he had to ask a PA to put him in my sexy underwear, that was like another barrier to go through, but becomes more normal. But actually, like when we did that for the first time, just to kind of mess about and have a bit of fun, we were on holiday and we just wanted to do something a bit different and like have a laugh.
Yeah.
And I think the PA that we actually plucked up the courage to ask felt quite honoured that like we'd been that vulnerable with her.
As your working relationship develops, you and your employer will find a level that you both feel comfortable.
I think it does take a long time sometimes to build, enough trust with a PA to like make it, to put yourself in a vulnerable situation with them in any, whatever area of life that is. And like, I think sex and intimacy is like no different in that sense. It's a growth. Like we would never put a PA in that situation on their first day. Like that just wouldn't be fair. I think it's got to be two-way. And there's got to be like a negotiation between like the carer and the person being cared for. Like for us, it's our PAs will do as much as they can to like position and facilitate, but won't actually get involved in like sexual activity. There may be times where they have to come in and help us in an emergency and see things that we'd rather they didn't, but then that's the trust we have with them.
People with neuromuscular conditions can also be going through their own journey in their sexuality.
As a gay man with muscular dystrophy, particularly when I was younger, I was not out to my family and friends, so that was an extremely uncomfortable like situation for me, that I would try and hide it from the PAs that I was working with. because I didn't want people to find out, and I think I think that caused me a lot of like psychological harm over the time.
I think one of the things is I would say to PAs is when it comes to like intimacy, like even if they kind of disapprove internally of like a way of doing something, they need to like keep that to themselves.
I think just having that sensitivity for what the person might be going through and what they're comfortable with sharing is really important.
If I could give one piece of advice to like PAs, is try to always be aware of like how what you're saying and doing is going to affect like the mood of the people around you, whether that be the people you're looking after or like other staff, because sometimes just kind of like expressing a moment of frustration can actually put the people you're looking after are like under quite a lot of stress without you realizing it.
Actually, my PAs were very supportive of me coming out, and that was quite that was quite liberating and made me realize that I'd be worrying unnecessarily for so long. So yeah, it was a very supportive environment, and I was kind of pleased that I'd kind of recruited PAs who were understanding in that way, because I hadn't recruited them on that basis, whereas these days I do recruit them on the basis that they are inclusive. But I think maybe it was just a really good thing that I had managed to recruit really supportive people.
Regardless of relationship status, people with neuromuscular conditions may want to masturbate, and their condition might mean that they have to find ways of being able to do that.
I think there's also a difference in terms of support if you're single or if you're part of a couple, or if you're the activity that you're talking about is with another person, or whether it's by yourself, because obviously if it's by yourself, you're probably more likely to need help and support with aspects like cleaning up.
So I basically broached it to a PA. I had a hard on in the morning, like a lot of men do, morning wood as they call it. And I just said it to her, because she obviously I had a hard on. And I went, look, I'm going to say something really embarrassing now. I've never asked anybody in my life this. But do you mind setting me up so I can just relieve myself? And I'll give you a shout out when I'm done. I said, can you put a towel here? Da 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 da. And she was like, yeah, no worries.
I think it's been very clear as well about what the boundaries are, what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate.
For some people with neuromuscular conditions, their condition means that they can't achieve any kind of sexual activity alone. In some situations, if someone doesn't have a partner, then they may want sexual contact which crosses a professional line. They might choose to seek short-term sexual encounters which build confidence, or they might hire a sex worker or sex surrogate.
The emotional and the confident side of you is also impacted here. So for me, it was a lot of barriers to be able to feel confident with a partner. Or even when I was younger at university, and it would be, just one-off occasions of sex, sort of one-night stands, as it were, like for a better term. And I remember being really frightened when I lost my virginity at 18 years old. And I wanted to hide all my equipment, like the ventilator, the suction machine, because I felt that there would be no way that I would be accepted as being sexy and all of that. But I think what it was, that was my own internal thing, rather than the partner or whoever it was I was with.
As with anything to do with sex, consent and communication is key. The person you work with will have their own unique needs and feelings. Your own attitudes, ethics, and beliefs will determine what you are comfortable with. As with everything in this series, open a conversation in a sensitive way to explore what's needed and what you will and won't do to help.
I think there's always a way. It's like everything in life. When you've got a disability, if you want it enough, like you can find a way to do it.
In this module, we've looked at the fact that adults with neuromuscular conditions have the right to engage in sexual activity. That people with neuromuscular conditions can feel nervous asking for the help they need. And that you as a PA can choose what help you're willing to give. We've heard that different people will have different levels of need according to their condition and circumstances. The key to setting boundaries is communication. And discretion, sensitivity, and confidentiality are important when supporting a person with a neuromuscular condition in their sexuality. We've explored how and when to discuss what help might be needed, what journeys your employer might be on in their own sexuality, and how they might get help with sex in other ways.